the three key points for approaching a lighting planning project is reckon with the space, really feel it, or if it's a planned project, try to imagine it. Second, don't glare the eyes. Try to avoid exposing the light sources to the persons in the space, if possible, or minimize that exposure and the glare. And that not only enlarges the comfort, but also the magic of the lighting. And third, don't use more than necessary. Light is precious and needs to be only there where you want it. Otherwise, it's pollution. Darkness and light actually don't contradict. They complete and nourish each other. My experience is that there are architects who really care about the lighting, and I'm not talking about artificial lighting only, but also the natural light situation in buildings and projects. And of course, there are architects who are overwhelmed by the sheer technical issues with the modern lighting, and that's where we come into play, and they consult lighting designers and specialists, and other architects just think they can still do it, and sometimes, unfortunately, they're just not reaching what they could actually achieve, and you see that. And some projects get along, and then the architect, or even maybe the owner, the client, or project management, or whatever, realize we need somebody to really take care of the lighting. And sometimes it's late, sometimes it's too late or very late, just for technical reasons, outlets and lines and wiring and etc. But I experienced all of that. If you talk about security at night, a lot of times the fact that, for example, women complain about dark spaces is not so much that there's so much darkness, but there's just the brightness on the other side, and that, of course, creates darker areas, especially if there are light sources which give you a glare. That when somebody comes up with a complaint, what usually is done, they add even more light, instead of really rethinking the whole scheme and trying to, consider that there might be just not the problem of the quantity of light, but of the quality and the location of the light sources. We talk a lot about light pollution nowadays, and of course, saving energy. And as much as LED can actually save energy, the interesting part is that a lot of projects bring in even more light, because they think, okay, now we have this energy saving devices of LED, so we can just really use even more light and make this building lit up more and have the light on all 24/7, etc. These kind of thoughts, which are kind of counterproductive in terms of saving energy. What was the purpose of the whole thing, or one of them, at least, one of the big advantages of LED technologies. I mean, I didn't have proper, or there wasn't even education when I started in the late 70s to go to college for lighting designers, And I grew up, and that's maybe also part of my it's part of my history and why I was devoted to light, because I was surrounded by modern design from the 60s and 70s. I grew up with it. My parents imported modern design from Italy, mostly at that time, including some companies like Artemidi and Ecolite at that time, and also furniture companies, So I grew up with these objects, and then I also was helping my parents very early on, at the age of 13, doing the lighting of their booth in the Frankfurt Trade Fair. And that's where I actually got in touch with Ingo Maurer's booth, and it was always fascinating. And so maybe when I was 13 or 14, I first met him and saw his creations and the way, he was like dealing with light, which was so different from everything else around.